So I have two accounts on OGS. One is my personal account that I use a lot. The other one is an account I created for this podcast, Starpoint, and I haven't really used it much. I just wanted to have it in case I needed it. But I logged on to that account for the first time in a long time, and I noticed a feature on OGS. I don't know how long this feature's been in there, but it was asking me to select a rank from beginner to intermediate to advanced, and the 5Q and above section was the advanced or something like that. So, and that was the highest one I think you can select. I clicked it and it immediately set me to like 1Q, 1 Dan ELO. And I don't know how long this has been in there for. I think it's a good thing, probably to prevent this kind of bulging at, I think 12Q was the original rank that we always got when we had a new account. But it does give us some opportunity to set our rank before jumping into matchmaking, which is, again, I think it's probably a good thing. Though I tried it again right now, and I just wanted to see the UI one more time, and I tried to create a new account, but this time when I saw the beginner, intermediate, advanced stuff, I didn't see any rank indicators. It was just the words, basic, intermediate, or so it was like basic, new to go, something like that. And I'm not sure if that's just the difference between when you create a new account right away versus you already have an account, but you haven't selected a rank or played any games. I don't know, but anyway, I thought it was an interesting little feature that I'd mentioned that I had never seen on OGS. Don't know how long it's been there for. Welcome to Starpoint, the show about Go, for Go fans away from the board. And today, I have a pretty special episode for you. A few weeks back, Telegraph Go, very prominent member of the Go community, I'm sure you've heard of him, had invited me via email to a session of Rocket League. Seeing that he is a Rocket League player himself, he's a lot better at me in Rocket League and Go. But he invited me for a little stream session. So we did a stream while playing Rocket League. And I have to say, he had a very interesting perspective on Go, a lot of unique thoughts to share, and I particularly enjoyed our conversation about verb quality versus noun quality evaluation of the board. That'll make more sense once you listen to the conversation. Another conversation that I really liked that we had later on was why he thinks that power is way more important than territory when thinking about playing the game. This was a 3-hour-long stream, so this podcast episode is an abridged version focusing on all the Go content of the stream. If I ever sound distracted or kind of just out of it during the thing, forgive me. I was playing Rocket League and I'm not great at multitasking between video games and talking, at least. But I tried to keep up with them. But anyway, without further ado, this is our conversation. I hope you enjoy.
I do not tend to go over Joseki like over and over and over again. In fact, like most of the time that I was just doing that, I'd explore down variations that I expect to never really happen in the game, and I'm trying to get myself confident in playing the kind of position.
Okay.
By myself, right? Like basically, at my level, I should be able to just randomly improvise. On positions I've never seen before, and it should be just as good as Joseki.
Right.
So it's better that I learn how to do that in the types of positions that I want to be able to play than that I like memorize variations or anything like that.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I've been trying to with Joseki. I mean, I've been trying to go over it kind of over the course of a few days so that it really sinks in. Because I feel like I've like learned Joseki before, and then it's just kind of I forget it like after a week. Yeah, it's not really useful anyway. To be honest, I think it's more important for most people to learn how to play. Most. Yeah, no, I think the thing is though, I feel like I sometimes like I can't play outside of Joseki because I'm scared. So like I don't know what to like. For example, the one like I was kind of trying to familiarize myself with recently was when they do the double hane, and I don't want to go that direction. So it's like I would never do the other way because like I didn't know what to do. I would always just take the double hane. But then I decided to like look up like what can you do?
But the other direction is usually just worse. So usually you should accept it if you get double hunted. Like if you get in a situation where you get double hunted, you're talking about the 4-4, right? 4-4-3 evasion double hunted. Yeah. So the ways to like dodge the direction there are all kind of just bad.
Really?
And it usually
well,
just
what if there's like a bunch
already.
of like pincering stuff on the other side, and you don't want to like have like your result?
And you shouldn't have 3-3'd.
You shouldn't have 3-3. Got it. I see.
In general, we always just should accept that. But that's like, I mean, basically, the reason why you don't feel confident to do that other stuff is because you kind of realize that the fighting is very suspicious. It's very hard to get
no, because like if I know a Joseki versus like trying to guess something else, I'm like, I'll just play the Joseki. I know it's not terrible, so I'll just play the Joseki.
Yeah. But I don't feel comfortable. Anyway, yeah, basically Go, it doesn't have any moving parts, right? Like when you look at a position, it doesn't change until you play.
Yeah.
Or until your opponent plays. And so that makes it very easy to think about the game without considering whether actions are happening, since no actions are happening. But there's like a very fundamental difference to me about whether you think about what you would like to do or whether you think about what you would like the result of what you do to be. Like the difference between thinking about what verb quality or what noun quality that you're looking for.
Wait, so which one's the one you try to do?
Noun quality. I think verb quality is like very easy and intuitive for us, but noun quality is less easy and intuitive to like understand about. And so it helps me a lot to think about it.
So, is that more like a psychological thing, or
no? Not psychological at all. It just tells you facts that you didn't know otherwise.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So, like in Go, when we talk about what is a good move, then you might think like, oh, it's one in good shape and in a good direction, right? Mm-hmm. Good shape and good direction are like descriptions of the move itself, right? Yeah. The choices of what action that you could have, it depends on, is it good shape, is it good direction, is it right?
Right.
Is it doing the thing that you would like it to do? But instead of thinking like that, there's actually many moves that do something that isn't necessarily bad throughout the course of the game, right? That you can choose between. You can choose like, I'm going to run out my group. Should I play a knight's move or should I play a one-space jump? I don't know. Both of them are good shape, good direction, whatever. So it's hard to decide.
So that's the distinction between should I play this move or that move versus like, is it good shape or is it good direction?
Basically, by judging by action quality, you can learn some things, right? Like you can learn about, I should not play my empty triangle. Oh, I should make sure to defend my weak group. I should make sure to attack when I have an attack build and stuff like that, right? But by judging by nouns, you can be like, okay, between these different things that all do, good actions and stuff that defends my group, stuff that, that brings the ball towards their goal, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I have the choice between several of these that are all like apparently good by action. Then how do I choose between those? You can choose, what position are they going to end up in, right? What position am I going to have at the end of each of these different actions I can take?
Okay, got it. So it's like it feels like you got to think a little bit, more ahead. What's going to happen, like with the consequences of your actions, basically, right?
Right, exactly. It is about like, okay, what is the after what I do, then what is going to happen next, and then like what is that position? What do I end up with, and then optimizing that. Basically, if you optimize every action that you do, and you're like, this is the best action. That action is definitely not bad. That action is definitely not bad. Then you'll do better than people who are not optimizing by action, but you won't play like perfect. Right? Mm-hmm. You aren't going to choose the best action every time because it's just too hard to judge these very, very minor differences. But if you judge the right position every time, as long as you like know what positions are better than others, then there's no like gaps. There's nothing that's like, I wasn't sure whether this position or that position was better. I mean, if there is that kind of issue, then you'll still have a gap there, right? If you still can't make a positional judgment. But in general, like positional judgments, you have much more you have many more tools than with action judgment in games sitting there.
It's still kind of hard for me to like distinguish the two, because like you can kind of view anything both ways. Like if I say I'm going to do a one space jump, right? You can say, oh, that's an action. But then like if you look at the board position after the one space jump, that's like the result, right? Or the noun.
Yeah, they're totally tied together for sure.
Okay.
But basically when I ask you judge the position after you've played this one space jump, then you can start telling me about like, oh, there's a cutting point there, and there's, you know, this group still has 3 ways to get out, and you know, the shape in general is faster towards this direction, less fast towards that direction, and there's like a lot of extra details that you can add to just like the residuals, the stuff that wasn't directly affected by your action, but the stuff that still exists within the game, right? And those things you can still judge when you're judging by noun rather than judging by verb, and that gives you more, as I said before, more tools, but like more details to make better judgments with, right?
Is that noun verb idea like something like you've been thinking about recently, or is it just something you've always like been trying to emphasize?
So it's something that I understood after my first Pro Quals appearance, which was about 2 years ago, something like that. And basically, I believe that difference is what that like, by thinking about positions instead of by thinking about actions is the main difference between the top amateur players and the professional players and sort of mid-dawn amateur players. Is that the mid-dawn players, they tend to do all their actions right throughout the course of a game, but they don't get all the positions right. And then the higher level that you get, the more often that you'll find players. And then at professional level, I think all of them just think by position, and they don't.
Okay, is there a difference
between
between what you're talking about and tactics versus strategy?
Absolutely, yeah. Tactics versus strategy is like reading details is tactics, right? It's like the very tight details, and then strategy is the less tight details.
Yeah.
So it's like the difference between positional judgment and action judgment,
yeah,
right, is very separate from that, because you can still use positional judgment to judge your tactics and your strategical thinking, right? No matter like whether you're reading something that's very intense, you'll still think while you're going through that. If you're using the positional judgment properly, you'll still think, okay, I played this move to create the position where these tactics exist, and those tactics don't exist anymore, and these tactics exist. Not I do this to attack them, or to like break this, or to cut that.
Can you think of an idea
whatever.
where like an action is good but the position judgment is bad?
All the time.
Like right now, like what would be an example?
Let's say you want to attack a weak group, and so you try to break its eyes somehow.
Okay,
and
which is a good action.
That's a great action, right?
Okay.
And then it turns out that what they can do is they can chase the eye space, and they can get enough eye space to make a seki. So then the position ends up, oh, you failed your action finally,
I see.
Right? But you failed your action not because the action was bad.
Right, the action was like, it was a correct
position.
move in terms of like what you're trying to do, but there are more implications. I got it. Okay. I think that's actually kind of something I've been trying to work on, because I don't know, because at my level, it feels like you can get very far, I don't know, maybe you might think that below top amateur, it's like, oh, all just action based. But yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's really hard to wrap your mind around like the higher level, like positional strategies, especially in the beginning. It's like nothing ever works out in that way, right? So you're just not going to try for a long time, because whatever you try, oh, I'm going to push this group over here and it's going to make me a bunch of territory. And then it's like when you play it out, no, for some reason it just never happens, because there's so many things that you can't think about. but I assume like, as you get stronger, which I feel like, I've gotten a little stronger since I last tried to think about stuff like that. So I guess I try to see if I can reincorporate some of that kind of thinking.
Someone in the chat said action judgment is like a more complicated case of positional judgment, which is kind of true, right? But the thing is, it's easier for your mind to wrap around when you're like, oh, I made this move, and this move is bad because I should, in general, be doing this instead. Or I made this move, and that move is bad because, in general, I should be doing that instead, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not like action judgments are bad. And, there's many people who've gone to mid-dawn just by optimizing on what actions that they would like to do all the time, right? And it's a totally effective way to get that good. It just is not really effective anymore once every action that you're doing in the game is good anyway. And like, when the decision is, when the games are decided by like who makes the better, very minor decisions between, all these moves that could be slightly good, and then AI that says that this one is like 1 point better, that one is 1 point better. And I want to beat someone who only makes that kind of mistake.
Yeah.
Then I can only do it with positional judgment. It's not like action judgment will tell me anything about which one of these moves is going to be 1 point favored to Katago, right? Or if it does, then it would like basically a lot of the time if you do that positional judgment, then you'll learn something about the action judgment. So you could only possibly know that running with a large nice move is better than running with a one space jump in positions of such and such nature if you have seen them before and positionally judged them before and found that by positional judgment that you end up in a better position after the large nice.
Yeah.
So that you can like extract this knowledge that you get from the positional judgment and then think about it in action quality in the future, which is, in my opinion, how all the 9-dans play this. It's how we can play like every single move in a game in 10 seconds and not blunder the whole game.
Yeah.
Because we're just applying stuff that we learned from positional judgment into which principles of action judgment.
Sounds like shape knowledge, or is that different?
You can call it shape knowledge, but it's like it's like shape knowledge. It can be like shape knowledge. It's also contextually dependent shape knowledge. It's like, okay, I understand that I have a weak group here. I understand that my weak group is trying to make an I space.
Okay.
And then...
Okay. So it's a little more than... It's like another step beyond shape knowledge.
Right.
Because shape knowledge is pretty local, right?
Yeah. I mean, it becomes not very... Like, I don't know any shapes in terms of, like, a local sense anymore. I think of all of them contextually now. But it's like, you only get that sense after doing positional judgment, in my opinion. To understand about, this shape actually made my position better in this position.
Right.
You kind of have to ignore the general principles that you were taught once. Just think about it yourself.
Yeah, it's constantly like every time you learn something, it's like, well, now let's make it more complex, like by 10 times. Are you gonna be in the next qualifiers?
I am. Yes. They are.
When are they?
In mid-late June. So I should choose not by what action I want to make, but by what position I should end up in. Yes, that's my firm belief is that it is just better in terms of Go, and it is a very useful tool in terms of all the other games. So the reason why I increased in chess a lot, just by understanding this and not actually like doing anything with respect to chess. Is because I used to be a player who was all about doing the aggressive actions. I loved moving my knights forwards and, making an aggressive position by just putting my stuff forwards. But then I realized, after I had this revelation, I went back to chess and I gained a whole bunch of rating for free. It was because I was only making aggressive positions that are actually like positions where my opponents should feel that they have a hard time. And I don't make the aggressive action if it ends up in a position where they feel very comfortable. Like a lot of the time before, I would just sort of move my bishop forward and it would get kicked out, and then I'd have to move my bishop back. I don't know if this has ever happened to you.
Sounds like
in chess.
Well, I play Roy Lopez, so I kind of have to do that all the time.
Right. But yeah, now I don't play the Roy Lopez anymore. Just because of this principle, I don't want to put my bishop in a place where it doesn't actually make the best the best thing. Would positional judgment be more so who is tanukiing at the right time or places, or is that still considered action judgment? That's still action judgment. Yes. That's still not positional judgment, because like positional judgment is about okay, I can tanuki or I can play locally. It doesn't matter what is like the action between them. It's just what do I have at the end, right? And that whether you tanuki or do this action or some completely diametrically opposed action or whatever, you'll still do the same position judgment at the end of the day. It doesn't change that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, when I ask someone, hey, is this good for white or good for black? A lot of people know, even at very low ranks. Like, if I just ask a 5Q, is this good for white or good for black throughout following a game at one dan, then they know who scored at all times, pretty much. They know, like, if in a one dan game, who is doing better here, who is doing better there, who is doing better there. So then why don't they just do only things that make them better?
I feel like
right?
I feel like positional judgment's really hard sometimes.
It can be hard sometimes, but it's not as hard as action judgment, at least when it comes to the fine details.
I like to pay attention to strong players who just look at a position and they go, well, obviously black is better here. And then it's usually not obvious to me. I'm like, okay, let me internalize this as much as I can.
Right. Yeah, I remember I used to chase any time that a strong player said something obvious. We were like, whenever like one 9-dan plays a move and the other 9-dan says that's obviously bad or something like that.
Yeah.
I like to say stuff is very like obvious or say things very strongly, but it's actually pretty hard to say things strongly at a high level because everyone has a good reason for what they're doing most of the time.
But it's useful to use like that strong language. It causes like an emotional reaction and it helps you remember.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's absolutely useful.
This is 3s now.
I could say a lot more strong language about like still relatively high level games. Like I can say that this mid-down move is obviously bad because the position it creates is one where blah blah blah. But it usually will always end up being punishment. That makes me say that. Not action judgment. At mid-down level.
That's also kind of like when instead of reviewing, you'd rather just play another one.
Yeah, same thing. When I reviewed more games in Go, I started like watching the occasional replay in Rocket League. But I even at that time, I knew that I wasn't that serious about Rocket League or to Go. So it's just it's so much less fun to review a Rocket League game because it's like
I don't know.
It's super obvious. Oh, this is just a mistouch. Oh, this is just I didn't see that he was gonna miss that mid ball or whatever. It's in comparison to Go where you like have to make the decision again. If you review.
Yeah, I think like if you compare reviewing Rocket League versus reviewing, the reviewing in Rocket League versus playing is so different compared to if you review and Go, it's almost like you're playing still. Like
it really
kind
is.
of using the same process. You just you're not under time pressure and like you're not actually gonna get a winner or loser. But like in Rocket League, when you're reviewing, you're literally just watching, and you can't really. I don't know.
So a good way of reviewing games would be seeing if action judgments lead to a position you predicted. If so, or if not, why not? That is exactly what people didn't understand when I made my review video, and I talked about shifts. I was talking about like, hey, this is the moment where your positional judgment changes, and like a lot of people understood about surprises and understood about successes, and then they didn't really. It seemed like a lot of people, the feedback that I got was not so clear on shifts. It was because I wasn't very like obvious about about what I really meant. And what I mean by shift is like, okay, you make a positional judgment and you're supposed to be judging by position, right? And then you check to see when your positional judgment was like wrong or when it changed unexpectedly or something like that in a way that you didn't think that your action quality should have changed it, right? So like wherever you see a disconnect between the action quality and judgment, like position quality, then that's the moment where I call it a shift and where I want you to pay attention and like learn in your review.
Okay, like try to understand why your action didn't result in the position you predicted.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what a shift is about. What I was trying to use that word for, but it didn't really go across very very well because I didn't explain it very well.
Yeah, I think what might happen is, at least for me, like when sometimes during a game, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to play this move because this is what I think will happen and this is good for me. And then once it doesn't happen, I forget like what I initially intended. So that's why I don't review like what I should have done to make it better. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm constantly trying to think of the next thing, right? So the board state changes and it's just like, oh, what was I trying to do again? It's irrelevant now because it's a different position. So it's like, but might be good to like have some landmarks to review.
I mean, this is one of the things about positional thing. Actually, everybody forgets stuff when they play Go. It just is very, very natural at all levels. Even though you may not think that the pros are like forgetting things, they do just like forget about this and forget about that, and then it happens. And like, if people were more honest, even at a high level, and they were reviewing games, they wouldn't be like, "Oh, I thought between this and this, and then I thought it was actually this." And then I got it wrong because I didn't see this variation or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't get it wrong because they didn't see the variation. They got it wrong because they forgot that there could be such a variation.
Right.
And that's why they didn't look for it in the first place, right? And so yeah, this is common at like every level. Depending on what you're trying to think about, you will just like totally forget part of what you were trying to think about. And so one of the things that the positional stuff helps you with is it gives you more excuses to try to remember the stuff that exists on the board that is not relevant to your current action, right?
You've probably played a lot of games on stream or while recording and talking. So you, like, I've always thought, like, if I did that, would I kind of understand my thought process during the game more?
I would say no.
No, because I think it's like, it's distracting, right?
Not really.
Like, the fact that you talk too, like...
It is distracting, but that's not like really the reason why it doesn't help. It mostly doesn't help to extrapolate more because like you don't actually extrapolate more. You just say stuff that is very intuitive to you, and you don't talk about stuff that isn't intuitive to you. So like, I mean, I guess maybe it helped me understand my intuition a bit better, but I think that teaching was honestly much better for that than explaining games on stream. To get more in tune with my intuition, because
it's
when
weird,
you teach, obviously you have to like know
that idea you're talking about, where like you just don't consider something. It's like kind of a puzzle as to like how to improve that, because it's like you spend the time to learn a concept, so it's like you know it, but now it's like when you're playing a game, for some reason you just don't see those. Like it's not like you don't know what those are, but so it's like, how do you learn to spot that at the right time?
Yeah, so like how to remember things more often in your game, right?
Yeah, and like and try to like prioritize what moments are important to remember, like what your thought process was, because you obviously can't remember like everything for every move.
Yeah. So the most important thing about remembering stuff is not remembering stuff, but just like finding it again whenever it's relevant.
Right.
Because you will actually just forget things and everyone humanly is going to forget things all the time. It's very, very normal. But if you are like finding everything on every move and like thinking, oh, that's relevant and that's relevant and that's relevant on every move, then even if you forget it on one move, you'll remember it the next move, right? It really minimizes the impact of like, oh, I forgot that there was a weak group there. If you look for a weak group every single move, and then you just miss it this one time, and then the next move you get to find it again, right? So part of what positional judgment quality is about is like you just look around everywhere to judge the value of your move, and you just see, oh, there's a weak group there, and then with respect to my move, is my move good because there's a weak group there? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and you like make the judgment again, and make the judgment again over and over and over again.
Yeah, but there's like, it's not just that, right? So it's like 5 other things you got to be thinking about.
It's not just that, right? There's like, you have to find cutting. So like when I play a game, I look around for cutting points whenever I play some move in an area, and whenever they play some move in an area. Basically in like a, I don't know, 10 by 10 square grid, I find every cutting point in that area whenever a move gets played. It's just like the first thing that I look for, and that's just habit.
What's the first thing you look for?
cutting points.
Oh, cutting
like
points.
Someone plays a move, and then I just find all the cuts that are nearby, all the potential places where stuff can get separated. And that way, I will never forget, because even though I do forget, I will just remember the next time that move gets played in that area, right? And basically, one of the problems with forgetting is that you also forget when it changes. So a lot of the time, some move will be played, and the cutting point changes, and you don't realize that it changes because you forgot that it was there. You sort of like turned it off in your brain because you read it and
right.
it didn't work.
Yeah. That shortcut of like you assess it once and then you stop assessing it.
Yeah, exactly. So you can change that shortcut. You can do that better. You can remember it better if you just like check it again, right? Because you can't remember that it changed after they play a move. You wouldn't know, right? Unless you really were very careful about, I'm going to alert myself to this cut becoming important again, exactly if he has a stone there, or there.
Right.
And, even in that circumstance, like, you're just going to make mistakes if you try to do it that way.
I mean, that's something that's like so cool about Go. Like, it looks so similar, and then just one stone will change everything so much.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I was just doing with the Joseki study before this.
Yeah.
Studying 2 space high Joseki, pincer Joseki to the 3/4 low approach. And that's just like an entirely different set of variations than the 2 space low or the 1 space low. And all those moves are like, they create very similar positions, fundamentally. But their action quality is very similar, but then the just like sort of inherent chaos of Go makes the positions sort of diverge and then diverge a bit more, depending on how the people play upwards, right? Just trying to make some small positional improvement, some small improvement here, some small improvement there, back and over again, and then everything is different. It's definitely the best thing about Go, competitively, in my opinion, is that the games, they have a very long period of like both players just making pure skill decisions about their situations they haven't been in before. Like many games, they just that time of the game where it's all about like a normal, like chaotic, skillful game it's shorter than just like the part of the game where you're finishing things or the part of the game where you're starting things, right? Chess, for example, the mid game can be like 5 moves, the opening like 20, the end game like 30. That's so much worse than Go's mid game is like 200 moves, opening is like 20, and end game is like
worse in what regard?
The game has so much more room for the players to show their decision making, like tendencies and ideas and skill and like basically so much more personal evocation, could I say, like for identity that you can put on the board. That's why we call it hand talk, right? It's that you have such a long time to be able to say what you want.
Yeah, there's that you know how like every game has like this inherent like maybe like randomness may not be the perfect word for it, but like there's some variance in terms of like who's gonna win. Even though, one player may be stronger than the other. I think the thing is that with Go, since there's so many opportunities to show your strength versus the other person, it's kind of like when you play many games versus just one game. If you play many games against a strong player, you're probably going to lose most of them. But then if you play one, there's a chance that you might just win that one.
Yeah, it's the same thing. In Go, you can win. I wouldn't win every single fight if I played against a one-dan. I would lose a fight here and a fight there if I got like 100 fights in a row, right? Or maybe not the whole fight, but I would absolutely like make a mistake that they punish for a move, something like that, right?
Yeah.
But because the game is not just going to be decided by one fight, I can win by making another 100 fights and then winning the other 99. Right?
Yeah.
Just making my way back as best I can. And so you may be able to tell from my Go, which is also quite defensive, quite thick. I'm a big fan of a good high quality defense.
Do you think
like
you made yourself that way, or you just like that?
No, it's just my personality, I think.
Were you like that as a weaker player too?
Yeah. I've always liked the NFL over college football, for example, and like
You liked what over what?
the National Football League over college football. College football, they score a touchdown every drive. I find it quite boring. And then in the NFL, the defense actually wins sometimes, right? The defense does well, and sometimes they don't do well, and that's interesting. But it's like, I'm a big fan of.
I'm in the attacking camp. Got to tone it down.
Easy. There's nothing wrong with attacking, obviously. Most people who get stronger in the attacking camp. One of the things about liking defense is that you should recognize that you shouldn't actually be on defense if you want to be winning. You're supposed to end the defense. Which is sort of like an interesting thing for me to learn and understand as I try to get better at defense in Go and in Rocket League and all sorts of games. That I should enjoy the times when I have defense because I'm trying to get good at it, but I should not actually hunt for it, right? I should not get on defense for no reason.
Right.
I play Go like Minecraft, just let me build and leave me alone, but people always invade and stuff. And on the other side, we have Eric Yoder of the very famous Broken Ladder game, one of the most aggressive players in North America, which is also one of the most aggressive regions, saying, I am a defensive Go player, which is definitely not true. But you can think like that if you want. Sure.
Yeah, it's funny how our perceptions of our own style is different from what everyone else thinks sometimes. Isn't it like Takemiya Masaki who said I don't think I have a cosmic style, I have a natural style or something like that. I don't try to play cosmic.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, everyone's like, yo, you're playing influence every time.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. If you invade, reduce everywhere, and try to live there, is it still defense? Yeah, this is actually... No, this is all jokes, obviously. But this is actually something that I was thinking about when Zichen tried to convince me that he's actually a defensive player or an aggressive player, and it's very confusing because what he does is he plays very, very defensively in the game. He defends everything all the time because he starts by doing something so ridiculously aggressive that he has to end up on defense. It's forced that his opponent would get an attack.
Trying to victimize yourself.
Victimize yourself. But is that an aggressive play style or a defensive play style? If you go on defense every game all the time, but only because you did something aggressive.
But did he mean to? Does he want to be in that position later on?
Yeah, exactly. He wants defense. He believes that he can win the defense position. So he does something that's incorrect that gets himself on defense. I think as long as it's crazy aggressive,
philosophically offensive. Because he's
right. But an aggressive game plan, but not actually aggressive play, something like that.
What's one of the most common things that you find yourself telling your students?
Definitely that the territory does not matter as much as influence. So the main point of this, the main thrust of this, do you know how much the first move is worth in terms of points, expected value of points that you'd get?
Let me think. Is it well, okay, the answer I would first think of is Komi, but I'm assuming it's not that.
It's double Komi.
It's double Komi. Oh, right. Or no, it's isn't it it's 150% of Komi?
It's double Komi because if the first player passed, right? Yeah. Then the second player could play, and then the first player would deserve Komi if the game would be even, right?
I think I've thought about this before. I just don't have the brain power right now.
Yeah, understandable. I've taught it many dozens of times.
I think, I know what you're saying. Makes sense, though.
So the point is the opportunity cost of the first guy passing is Komi, and then the other guy gets Komi, right? So is the point. The opportunity cost is the first move is worth 14 points.
14 points, okay.
That's 2 times 7 is fair code.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So then the question is, how many of those 14 expected points are in the form of territory, expected territory, and how many of them are in expected power?
That's not something I really thought of, but are you specifically talking about the first move, right? Like the first move, like basically you play in the 4-4.
So the first move is just like a random opening move. It could be 3-3, it could be 3-4, it could be 4-4. So it could be more influential or more power based or whatever. But they all have basically the same spread, actually, in my opinion.
Okay. So, for example, I mean, okay, there's like an assumption. For example, like let's say you play 4-4 and then they immediately 3-3 you, and then now all of your points have been converted to influence, right?
Yeah. Well,
versus
that's possible.
If you took the 3-3 and then they, just a possibility. But you're just saying, like, in general, like the first move, like what is it approximately?
Yeah. So like if you get if you end up getting power in the corner, if your group in the corner is saved, that doesn't mean you didn't get power, right? Like part of the value is still power, it's just that part of it is territory as well. So that's territory. And then when you get 3-3, then all of the expected territory is gone and you get like a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I can't really say. I'm only inclined to say that it's like 50-50, but I'm expecting you to say no.
I am gonna say no. So then which side do you think is more important?
Important or which side?
I'm asking you. So like the opening moves, they all have basically the same spread because just in general, all middle game moves have pretty much the same amount of expected power and expected territory benefits. Of course, like when it comes to invasions or like special types of moves, it can be a bit different, but usually it's pretty much the same spread. And it's about 80-20 in one side or the other.
Maybe we're talking about mid-game right now, or?
And middle game and opening.
Oh, 80 for what? 80 for territory?
Is it 80 for territory or 80 for power? Which one is 80-20?
Me?
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to guess power.
That is true. That is correct. And I can convince you, I think, by asking you about Tengen.
Okay, what about it?
So Tengen is like 0 expected territory stuff, right?
Oh, sure.
But it has the same amount of expected influence, expected power, as the other stones. It just is one stone radiating power towards the rest of the board, right? So if you played 4-4, you play Tengen, same amount of expected power.
Okay.
How much of a mistake is Tengen? How many points does it lose?
Isn't it like pretty low?
Yeah, it's just like 3 or something.
Yeah.
Okay? Something like 3 out of 14. So if I strip away all the expected territory from my opening or middle game move, I just have the expected power that I gain.
Yeah.
I lose only about 3 points. So it's like 11-3.
Okay.
So that means that the vast majority of value that you gain when you play a move is in the form of expected power, not in the form of expected territory.
Okay, so each move is mostly power.
Yes, absolutely. So if you are a double-digit queue and you're, not that confident about anything in particular, but just trying to do the best with what you got, then I recommend focusing on gaining the most amount of power that you can, or gaining the most amount of territory that you can.
Interesting.
Right. As a higher level player, there are some players who entirely focus on power and do not focus on territory at all. And then those players lose games when that 20% of the value of their stones, of the value of their moves, is controlled by the opponent, but not by that. Right? When the other player is playing something that's perfectly fine for power, but not as good as territory, on territory. Yeah. Then they can lose value. So when you think about it like this, then you can understand what's going on in your game a lot easier.
So, okay, then would you say never 3-3?
No, of course not. So 3-3, the reason why 3-3 is good is because it gains power in their corner. The whole reason is that you make a group which is alive in their corner. If you made a group which is getting attacked...
Okay, but wait, hold on.
But
it's not power, right? Because it can't do anything after. Isn't it just points?
What do you think that power is? What do you think the strength is?
Strength is well, that's really hard to describe, but I would say like I would say like, okay, like let's say the edges of the board are neutral borders. Power is having more of your own borders.
Ethan? Yeah, this is completely incorrect.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with strength, and that's why you find it hard to describe, is because you know, are struggling. But the point, what strength is how far something is from dying. For the whole point, the reason why we have two forms of
Wait, are you using the word power
forms.
interchangeably with influence?
I'll describe this later. They are interchangeable concepts, is the point. Not just I'm using the words interchangeably, but I'm using the concepts interchangeably.
No, because like you wouldn't say that 3/3 invasion has any influence.
Yes, I would.
Really?
Of course. Has influence over the corner.
Okay, I mean, but then the corner's settled, so it's like I can see how you can say that.
That means it has a lot of influence over the corner, right? Okay, so what I'm
right. I guess if you really want to like call it like that, sure.
So, from the beginning, strength is how far you are from dying.
No, yeah, strength I can tell. Like, okay, if you go to 3/3 and you do an invasion, that's a very, very strong group, right? Like, I can see that.
Yes. So fundamentally, there's two forms of value in Go, which are power and territory. Power being how likely you are to die or not, right? How likely they are to die or not, and territory being the expected points that you get at the end. So what that comes down to is the expected value that you're going to get by the rules for prisoners and for territory. And so you would think the way that people teach Go at the beginning, that territory matters more than prisoners, but in fact, prisoners is the more prevalent and useful form of value to be considering throughout a game, to be expecting throughout a game. So then the question that you have is like, okay, well, how can the 3/3 move, which invades something and generates a group which you have to save, which you have to make strong, and which doesn't allow you more control over the board, how can that be something that creates power? But what I'm talking about when I say that creates power is I'm saying the power is, let's talk about influence itself, right? What I'm talking about with respect to influence and power like that, I'm saying that power is what you expect an area to influence. It's the way that you expect a position of strength to impact the value of power that the players have over an area. So when you say, I have an influence here and I have a wall here, what you're accustomed to thinking like that is you're thinking, well, I have a group which is very far from dying nearby, and therefore,
no, because the way you're phrasing it makes me think of you're saying thickness.
Let's leave thickness off the table for now and talk about it another time. When you think of thickness, what you really mean is a wall pointing towards an empty area. That's what you're talking about. A strong group pointed towards an empty area. Well, no,
because like if you have a panuki, that's thick, right? That's not a wall.
A strong group, something that's very far from dying, pointed towards an empty area.
Right.
So if you have something that's very far from dying, pointed towards an empty area, if you play in that empty area, you are significantly less likely to die because you can connect to it.
Wait, sorry. Could you repeat that?
If you have a strong group and it's next to an empty area, then that area you have significantly increased control over.
Okay, right.
If you play in there, you're not likely to die because you have a strong group right there that you can connect to. On the other hand, if they play in there, they are more likely to die because one of the ways which they would like to go is your strong group.
Okay.
Therefore, that area, you have some control in the form of power over it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Then, when you talk about influence, you are not talking about the strength of the group itself. You're talking about the power in the area, which does not have your steps.
Right. Yeah, including all the empty spaces.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good way to think about it. Because like when I think about influence, sometimes I just think about the stones themselves. But yeah, right, like there's an area that influence has influence on. Right.
Yeah, of course. And so, in fact, if you just have influence not pointed towards an area, that's just strength, right? And that is exactly what the 3-3 invasion gets to.
Right.
So what I'm talking about in the form of power, getting power is the most important thing throughout Go, is really you're making sure that you're not dead
You're
in as many areas as possible.
I see.
Making sure that you don't die in
I see.
area.
I see. Now I'm getting why you're considering the 3-3 as power, because like from that mentality, it's like, yes, there is an area for that as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I generate power in the corner, right?
Right.
And then in particular, their power over the rest of their area that they can control, it doesn't seem like they get as much power as I do over my area. It's hard for them to make as many points as I do, right? So that's why the 3-3 is even a good move. It's like in the chat, our friend Zach, who is 5 to 7 Don Fox, he says, he claims.
He claims. Why do you have to always follow that up with that?
No, he is. He says, I hardly think about territory at all in my game. I only think about power, which is true. And that's common among mid-dons, that people at mid-don will usually only think about power and have entirely given up on the concept of territory, as it's like if you maximize for territory at all and then you sacrifice for power because of that, then you clearly won't gain as much value, right? Like if you have 2 slices of a pie that you're getting with each of you, one slice is for power, the power you gain, and one slice is for the territory you gain. If you start thinking about the smaller slice and making the smaller slice bigger, and then the rest of the pie is just like you don't care about it, obviously you're going to make some mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So you're saying this is something this is like a kind of a lecture you've been giving out to a lot of your students? Yeah.
Most people need this lecture in order to say. And it usually I give this to double-digit Qs like first lesson. To be honest.
Really? Yeah.
Because most double-digit Qs have been fooled by all this territory talk. They start thinking that territory is the most important resource in the game.
Yeah, no,
because territory,
right? Because they start capturing, and then everyone's just like, no, stop capturing everything.
So you might have, if you tried to teach someone Go and you tried to explain to them vague versus urgent moves, you might have like had a lot of difficulty. And the reason why it's very hard for people to understand that concept is that they don't understand that there's just intrinsically more value in the area where the power can change a lot.
Oh yeah, it's hard to see why you would want to.
Yeah, they're like, well, but why do I want to get the extra stone in the contact battle? Like that area, I don't care about that area very much. I don't see my territory there. And that makes entire sense. If territory were the most important value in Go, then indeed you would tanuki from contact battles in places where there was not much territory. So that their like intuition makes complete sense there based off of the facts that they've been told, which are lies, that territory is the most important resource, right? And so like almost all my double-digit Q students, the first thing I talk about is like, okay, you want to get power mostly and not territory. And so from this, then when they're greedy for attacks rather than greedy for territory, right? And which is a much better way to play. So they press harder that they can get a stronger, amount of pressure, stronger attack, weaker opponent group, stronger their group, that sort of thing. And if you're greedy for that kind of thing, you're greedy for, I want a position where I have more power over the board than I do right now, then you'll play naturally in a way that your opponent is going to fight against you more, right? Your opponent does not want to have that weaker group. They do not want you to become stronger. And so they get much more intense games. Like the reason why double-digit Qs get stuck, in my opinion, for the ones that do, is because they're outlining territories, and their opponent's outline territories. Yeah. And then at the end of the game, they're like, I don't know, he had more points, but I don't know why. And the reason why was because at some point they ignored some weak thing, or, they didn't manage to attack something, they managed to defend something well, something like that. But they weren't even focusing on that in the game, so they learn something like, oh, maybe this area I should have gone for the corner instead of the center, or something like that. Which, by the way, doesn't matter at all, and I hate that we teach that to beginners.
Sorry, what doesn't matter?
Corner, side, center.
Oh.
The corner, side, center matters for territory. Because in territory terms, it indeed is true that you need to... But in the opening and the middle game, corner, side, center is almost entirely irrelevant.
Okay.
Almost entirely irrelevant. So that's why at mid-dawn, you see that moves in the center are much more popular than at any other rank. It's because mid-dawns have realized that I'm supposed to play for power, and in fact, Tengen is just as good for power as any other thing.
I played a game recently with someone who's several stones stronger than me, and
Did he?
like I think it was like a 4 stone handicap, and I lost.
They gave me
And after the game, you know what he said? He kind of said the opposite of kind of what you're saying right now. He was like, "Oh, you know what would have made my life really hard if you just took points every move, because you start off with 40 points."
See, he's entirely wrong, and this is, I mean, your opponent is only a couple stones stronger than you, and this is why, to be honest.
Okay. Darn it, then now I don't know what I should have done.
No, you're supposed to take the vast amount. You do not have 40 more points at the beginning of the game. It's just factually untrue. Where are your 40 points?
True. Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess.
What you have is 40 more points worth of the balance of power. So you increase the balance of power with every move. And if you don't let him get any increases in the balance of power, then there's no way that he could possibly have won.
I can totally buy that line of thinking. What he said was okay. No, but I think there is partly of what he said was kind of right, which was his leading point to that point was that a lot of times when you make a center play, there's sometimes when it's iffy, when it's like it may not even have any value at all. Sometimes it does have value, and then it's like when you're between the uncertain center play versus like a certain like side, play, then maybe do that one instead of the center play that you're not sure if it's going to even do anything.
Right. So this does happen occasionally where you play a center play, and if the center play is not gaining you any particular extra amount of power, than the side play, then the side or corner play is just better because it maximizes on the smaller form of value, right?
Right.
That you can get. So corner side center does exist, all other things being equal, which is very rare, right? But most of the time when you play in the center and people are complaining, they're like, oh, this doesn't really matter. The reason is not really because of territory. It's more that the center was actually strong, and you didn't know that.
Right,
you didn't know that the center was strong already. Yeah. You didn't know that. Basically, you gain more power if you play a powerful move in an area where, the power is already low for one player or the other. And a lot of the time in the center, the power is quite high, and you don't realize it. People think, oh, there's so much empty space here, so the power must be low, so I can dominate it. But if both people have routes into the center, then actually there's hardly anything that's there.
Okay, so traditionally speaking, people have considered the 4-4 as the influence play and the 3-4 as the territorial play. So then what are your thoughts on those with this way of thinking?
So it does matter. If you play the 3-3, then you get maybe 5 points of expected territory and 10 points of expected influence or something.
Or 3-4. I mean, 3-3 is I guess maybe a little less common.
Oh yeah, sure. But these things, they do exist. And in terms of the position that you end up with, you can start analyzing about, I have power over here, power over here. Basically, what territory really is at the end of the day is it's expected power to such a high extent that your opponent will die in that area.
I see.
Right?
It's like an actual, completely crystallized power.
Exactly. It's 100% on the power is sort of like a sliding scale, and then once it reaches 100% and they're dead, that's your territory.
Okay, so they're connected. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So then, so you're saying you're well, now it's kind of going back into the dichotomy again, because it's you're saying, okay, so they're both power, but one of them is more solidified, right? Or one of them is more
Yep.
Which goes back to saying, if you want to put it simply again, it would be okay, well, that's just territory and influence again. But you're just saying when you think of territory, you should also think of it as power.
Yeah. But you should think of it as exactly power that's complete, and it is important to separate them.
Yeah.
To separate the power which is complete and the power which is incomplete, right?
Yeah.
So it's the territory and powered, because you can treat them very differently.
Okay, but then the question opens back up again, because like the beginning was like you're saying I should think of things as don't think territory is important and think of power as important, right?
I did.
So then, okay, no, so like I understood that, and then to the point where now we're distinguishing, like certain kinds of power are just more like crystallized. So then the question is back again where you're like, okay, so then what do you value more, crystallized power or potential power? Which is the same question as we started with, which is territory versus influence.
Yeah, and potential power, obviously.
And what?
Potential power. Influence, not
right.
Territory, right?
I just want to make sure I got it right, which is you basically say it's more important to keep your potential power as opposed to like the crystallized power.
You want to have initiative over the game, fighting control, right?
Yeah.
So those moments where the power is like unclear who's leading or where you can have you can potentially get control, you want to control more, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to have more full control over areas. You want to have more control in general over the whole board.
Got it. We'll see if that helps with what I'm doing with my Go games, but I think it's a fresh way to look at it for sure for me. Like I haven't really thought of it that way.
I think it's just useful to have it as in the background, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do have to go.
Yeah, that was fun. This is the longest Rocket League session I've had in a while. I usually only play like a few games at a time.
Yeah. It was fun though.
Yeah,
we won a game finally.
Yes, I'm glad we got our win.
Yeah, and I think I'm honestly just gonna uninstall Rocket League after this. Otherwise, I'll play too much.
yeah, that's a thing for sure.
So,
alrighty, yeah,
GG's.
Yeah, thanks for the shared stream. It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun indeed. Mm-hmm. Thank you, and I'll see you later.
All right, peace out. I hope you all enjoyed my conversation with Telegraph Go. If you want to see more of the conversation, and especially if you're interested in actually watching us play Rocket League during our conversation, go check out Telegraph Go's YouTube channel and give him a subscribe. He should be coming out with a video cut version of this episode, so keep an eye out for that. He also streams on Twitch. Thank you so much, Telegraph Go, for having me on your stream. It was a blast talking about Go and playing some Rocket League with you. We're going to have a rain check for listener mail this week, partly because of this Telegraph Go special episode, and partly because the Go versus Chess episode had a huge amount of feedback and discussion, so I wanted to try to cover as much as I can on that episode. But the question of the week this week is, has another hobby or skill or area of life taught you something about Go, or vice versa? Have you learned something during Go that applied to some other skill or hobby in life, like Rocket League? If you want to share your thoughts on this question, or if you have a Go story to share or have a question of your own, comment on YouTube or the Reddit post for this episode, or you can email me directly at starpointpaduk@gmail.com. That's starpointbaduk@gmail.com. If you're a YouTube listener, I would greatly appreciate a like and a subscribe. If you're a podcast listener, review and rating would also help. Thank you especially to Chris M., Jeffrey H., and John M. for supporting Starpoint. And I just want to, before we go, mention that a little known fact about the life and death status of the 19x19 grid itself. The board actually has a life and death status. It's dead because it has no eye. I'm not sure how many of you will understand what I mean by that, but thanks for listening. Keep playing Go.